Well, thank you, dear viewers, for staying with us. We're still coming to you from the Grand Egyptian Museum near the site of the pyramids at the Giza Plateau. You're still watching Nile Cruise with Ronald Assas and myself, Mohamed Abdelrahim. Now time to introduce you another guest here, and we have with us Mr. Mohamed Gamal, and he's an archaeologist. And thank you very much, sir, for joining us. It's a pleasure having you.
Pleasure to have all of you here in our lovely project, the Grand Egyptian Museum, and thank you for this interview.
Thank you.
Mohamed, it's a very good day, and we have the pleasure, of course, to have you with us. I was really impressed today when I came over and watched this amazing Grand Egyptian Museum that's under construction, of course, due to be inaugurated by 2020. Mr. Mohamed, groundbreaking with respect to its the museum's exhibited artifacts. The museum aims to impress with King Tutankhamun, of course, displays never shown since the Tut's tomb. Unearthing in 1922, what are the surprises that await the gem's visitors?
As you see, the collection of King Tutankhamun will be the most fascinating collection, will be impressed in our museum. And this will be the first time since the discovery of the tomb at 1922 by Howard Carter at the Valley of the Kings at Luxor. So this will be the first time to display more than 5,000 artifacts under one roof in one location, because what we used before to display only 2,000 artifacts in the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir on a space which is 700 meters, and the remains of the collection were stored, and some other artifacts were distributed in some other locations like the Military Museum and the Luxor Museum and etc. So here the visitor will have really a different experience, and the collection will be displayed using a different way and the latest technologies within the museum display and multimedia and the graphic panels, and the topics and the scenario will try to unlock the everlasting existence of this young king, presenting new information for the visitors and the new topics about his life and his health and etc.
Mohamed, I want to ask you about the recent discovery that has been described as one of the biggest and most important in recent years, the coffins in Luxor, exceptionally well painted and preserved. Talk to us about the significance of that discovery, Mohamed.
Of course, last week we had very good news from Luxor, and as usual the discoveries and the excavations are not finished in Egypt. Day by day we have new excavations, we have new secrets unlocked to know more and more about our great ancestors. This cachette, which dates back to 21 or 22 dynasty from the late period, from the ancient Egyptian dynasties, will be transported here in a special hall, and this will give a chance for both scholars and visitors to know more and more about this, presenting new technologies, as I said before. And this will be also important for the scholars for the documentation, because the situation and the context which excavated in the Luxor was very strange a little bit, so we need a little bit more interpretation about the coffins itself. So I think here in this museum, in our lovely museum, it will be a great chance for scholars to do more and more analysis, restoration, conservation and documentation to know more about the coffins and the history of the coffins.
Yes.
The international standards, sir, for the tour guides that are they qualified enough to guide tourists to such an amazing place, which is accounted as one of the biggest all over the world, the biggest museums all over the world, not to mention Egyptian ancient civilization, which has a lot. If we continue discussing Egyptian ancient civilization, it will never end, because it's a long time civilization. So the tour guides, are they qualified, or are you working on tour guides to make them very well qualified for this amazing place?
Actually, our role will be an archaeologist or a curator in a museum, but of course I'd like to give a message to my colleagues who are working in the tour guide field. Every part in this museum planned and designed to give a visitor experience completely different for both for the tour guide himself and for the tourist himself. So I think here the explanation and the installation which will be done for the galleries will attract the visitors, and of course will facilitate the visit to the tour guide. He will have a great chance, huge spaces to walk freely and giving his explanation, and of course the tools which will be provided by the administration here for audio guide and the screens and a lot of latest discovery.
Is there going to be any animation during the visit, screens,
Sure.
explanation for every single piece that's displayed on display?
Yeah, sure. The exhibition will not be static and presenting an artifact with a label. Sure, the exhibition will be combined with multimedia tools, graphic tools to give more and more explanation to the visitors about they will see here.
Right. Mohamed, I know it's difficult to talk about, specific treasures as far as our civilization is concerned, because the treasures are so many. But let me ask you, in your view at least, what are the main archaeological treasures, or the treasures that you cherish the most, that will be that are and will be displayed in this great museum?
The other big section in the museum is planned to exhibit an artifact for the ancient Egyptian timeline, started from the prehistory till the time of the Greek Roman. And of course, here we will present also some of these collections for the first time, because they were stored before, and the other was stored but not in a thematic scenario. So what we'll use here, the thematic scenario, presenting a new information and a new visitor experience for our visitors about valuable topics from the ancient Egyptian civilization, like the kingship, society, and beliefs. Also combined with the previous tools in Tutankhamun, the multimedia and the graphic and so on.
Mohamed, how many artifacts have been transferred to the Grand Egyptian Museum so far?
Right now, we transported from the whole over Egypt more than 48,000 artifacts, and 45,000 artifacts already conserved and are ready for the display.
Wonderful. Mohamed, talk to me about the ongoing construction here. What will the site look like when it's finished? The design, the effort, the obstacles, the financing, the government support, the deadline for finishing the project, everything about construction.
Yeah, actually the Grand Egyptian Museum is a new spot of light awaited by millions all over the world.
Yeah.
And as usual, this light will come from Egypt, come from the land of civilization. So the construction now is finished by percentage more than 90%, and now we are in the phase of the installation and the fitting out inside the gallery itself. And inshallah, we hope that the opening will be at the same level of greatness, will be by the end of the next year, 2020. Everything is going well, and by the way, the design of the museum itself, designed to link the Giza Plateau pyramids and the museum in one archaeological unity. So this why there was a must to make a development project in the surrounding area, connecting the pyramids of Giza with the museum itself. So the area completely will be different, will be converted to be a complete culture city, giving a different experience for the visitors. Contains many of restaurants, hotels, walkways, tourism walkways. A lot of activities will be done here in the museum. And of course, the most important two landmarks will be our lovely three pyramids and the fourth pyramid of Egypt, which will be the Grand Egyptian Museum.
Great.
Amazing. Mohamed, how is the cooperation between the foreign archaeological missions and Egyptian archaeologists to implement the excavation and restoration works for the museum?
Actually, our strategic partner in the project is JICA, Japan International Cooperation
It's
Agency.
a Japanese company.
Japan International Cooperation Agency, and they paid a lot of attention to the conservation. So many projects were conducted and are conducting between our side and their side in the restoration itself. And about all the missions in working all over the Egypt, they are very helpful. They are ready once we need any information to give an explanation or any service for our collection, they are ready. They have a proud to be our partner in this collaborative work.
Right. Mohamed, of course, the Colossus of King Ramses II was the first artifact to be on display from the museum's treasured collection. The moving process was very attractive. Everybody watched it in Egypt and around the world. Talk to us about the transfer, that moving process.
I still remember this night. It was at 2006, and at this night I was still a student in the Faculty of Archaeology, Cairo University, and I totally remember that whole Egypt were spent their night in the TV watching this magical transportation process. Really, the statue of Ramses II will be our iconic statue, will be in our atrium, welcoming our visitor, giving them a message that they are in a great museum, and I am a great king I am welcoming you in this museum, and I hope to have a nice visit in our museum. The transportation had been done before at two levels, one at 2006 and one last January, and also they have been done under the supervision of the companies like the Arab contractors, and of course our colleagues here is a conservation center.
Mohamed, what are the challenges you face in the transportation of this precious artifacts?
A lot of precious, and last 2 weeks we had another experience, and we moved from Tahrir Museum more than 4 huge artifacts. They were in the same carriages like Ramses, and also I spent this night with the artifact itself. It was great pleasure and a great responsibility, of course, great level of work. All of people here are working together in one hand, the construction side, the conservation side, and we are hope to do a perfect work like the greatness itself of the museum itself.
Right. Mohamed, watching the design here, of course, again, it's not finished, but it gives me a sense, at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, and you said this is going to be a cultural city, and I love this description of somehow of the design of the Bibliotheca of Alexandrina in some way. I don't know, maybe it's just the spirit of culture. But there is something that's in common between them. Talk to us about that. If that is the sense, or is it just like my feeling, or because culture is just overwhelming when it comes to Egypt, whether it's Cairo, Giza, or Alexandria, or elsewhere.
Sharing the same level of greatness of our civilization, of course. But here we in the what we call the pyramid wall, which is extended in its width for 600 meters, and its height is 45 meters. We took in the design decorative elements like the pyramids from the space itself. Of course, the square here will be completely different, and also what I have to mention that we will have here in this square the first hanged obelisk in all over the world, which will be hanged here in the front of the pyramid wall. And this also, besides the wall itself, will give a level of greatness of the museum itself, and give a message for our visitors before entering the museum that you are in a different place, in a different museum.
Mohamed, you mentioned that 90% of the construction of the Grand Egyptian Museum is already done. Why are you opening or inaugurating this amazing place at the end of 2020, not before?
Because as I said to you, now we are in the phase of the installation and fitting out, and the schedule is planned to be committed with the date which I mentioned. So you can imagine inside the place itself, it's huge spaces, needs a lot of work, need to be ready, and the installation will take time, and everything scheduled very well and scheduled to be committed with the date which is mentioned, and by the end of the 2020.
Mohamed, what are gonna be the main sections of the museum? Do you have an idea of the main classification, the main divide?
Once our visitor will enter the museum, he will have in both hands, on the right hand, which is in, he will have a mega spaces, contains a conservation center and the theaters and the shopping area, restaurant. And in the his left hand, the building of the museum itself, starting and before this, in the between, which is the atrium, where the statue from Caesar II will be there, and other 4 huge statues will be in the atrium. And the visitor will start his journey by passing throughout the grand staircase, which will be also another different space in the museum, contains more than 80 huge artifacts, huge coffins from our queens and kings and the ancient Egyptian gods. And then by the end of this grand stair, the interface will be our lovely 3 pyramids in a magical view. And then the visitor can take a right hand to visit the gallery of Tutankhamun, or the left hand to visit the historical gallery.
Mohamed, do you think that when it comes to the inauguration of this amazing place, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi will be the one that will inaugurate this amazing museum, which is accounted as one of the biggest in the world, if not the biggest in the world?
Sure. This museum will be the largest museum in the world, presenting one single culture, and there is a great attention given by His Excellency Mr. Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the President of our country, and also many ministers are opening their hand and cooperating with us to make a historical inauguration festival when we will open the museum for the public.
Mohamed, talk to us about some pieces that have never been shown to the public before, that you know of, that you think are going to be a major attraction. Just a hint.
Okay.
Just a little hint.
As I told you, the major and the hot spot will be Tutankhamun, okay? But also in the historical galleries, we have, for instance, from the pre-dynastic period, the collection of Tal al-Farkha, which is very, very unique collection. It was presented before in the Museum of Tahrir, but here it will have another chance to be presented in a thematic scenario, as I told you before. From the Old Kingdom, we have the collection of Queen Hatshepsut, the mother of King Khufu, and also from the Middle collection, from the Middle Kingdom, we have many and a variety of the artifacts from the new, and also we have the collection of Dandara and the collection of Wadi Bab al-Jisas. Many different collections, as I told before, will be displayed in their first time.
Wonderful, Mohamed. Eager to see the opening, I guess.
Yes, very eager, Mohamed. We hope to be here, and we
sure. Nile TV will be here for
sure.
sure.
We'll be here in complete coverage. We thank Mohamed.
Thank you very much, Mohamed Gamal, archaeologist. It's been a pleasure. It's been informative. And thank you for having us. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. And I'd like to give a final message that from my point of view, I am giving a name to this area. This is the land of challenges. And thousands of years ago, our ancestors giving for the humankind a miracle, which is our lovely pyramid. Now their grandchildren are in the same level, working hard to present another miracle to the humankind, which will be the Grand Egyptian Museum.
Ahmed Gamal, wonderful words, very touching to end this amazing interview. Thank you very much again for your informative knowledge, and thank you very much for joining us here on Nile Cruise. Dear viewers, you're still watching Nile Cruise, stay with us and don't go away. We'll be back again with another segment. You're at the Grand Egyptian Museum, landmark here in Egyptian civilization. Stay with us.